hopefully you're coming in to check out what we're going to be talking about today in the Creative Checkup. This is a weekly pep talk for musicians, creators, faith-focused freelancers, anyone that needs help, really just getting through what this creative life entails. And we always do that from the perspective of faith, career, and relationships. So as you're checking in, let me just make sure I got to reach around here and grab all these different things. The chat, we're on YouTube and Facebook. So I see a couple people have joined us already on Facebook. Thanks so much for joining us. And make sure the chat is also working here. Got a bunch of things running around, but hopefully we can keep everything going and keep you guys involved. So make sure to ask us any questions you have about what we're talking about. Let's see, there we go, the messages are up. Let me say hello to everybody. And we'll get started. All right, so thank you very much once again, everybody, for joining us, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube. And what we want to talk about today, what I wanted to hopefully share with you and ask you is what were you doing 4 years ago around this time? What were you doing in 2016? And I know a lot of people, as soon as you say about 2016, you might be thinking of, oh, well, that was the election year. And yes, we're in an election year now. But I'm referring more to your personal and your creative life. What was going on in your personal, your creative life in 2016, and how has that changed? What has changed in 4 years? And I'm sure if you're like any of us, a lot has changed in the last 4 years when it comes to our personal lives, to our creative lives, just in this last year, obviously alone, there have been so many changes, so many things that have happened. And so let me see if I can just do this over here real quick as well. I wanted to make sure I'm also sharing with our Instagram audience, but I had to get that set up as well. Try to find a place where we can, there we go, that works. All right, so boom. All right, now we're finally set up. Okay, so what I wanted to ask you is what changed in the last 4 years? And if you put that in the chat, even if you're watching this on the replay, the reason why I wanted to ask you this is because I'm always feeling nostalgic and reflective around this time of year. It's August as I'm recording this, and this is the year 4 years ago, the time of year 4 years ago when I was finishing up my book, God and Gigs. So every year when it comes to this time, I think about what was happening, what was I working on, what was in my mind, what was I focused on, what was so important to me that I had to work on this. And 4 years later, I look back and it's like, well, life has changed entirely. My career hasn't changed entirely, but it's definitely different than it was in 2016. I'm sure yours is. You might be doing a whole different thing. You might be living in a different city. You might have a different, your family might have changed, grown. You might be in a totally different space creatively than you were 4 years ago. And so many of these things that we're talking about. Hello, Instagram. Good to see you. Thanks so much for joining me. Talking about changes and how to navigate changes in 2020, and to use these 3 different areas I'm about to talk about to help you do that. So in my life, 4 years ago, like I said, was the time that I was releasing my book, God and Gigs, which is right here behind me. This is the book that I've been talking about, and of course I've been writing, that everything is based on. And the reason why I keep going back to it now, 4 years later, is because, oh, by the way, I should mention that if you want to get that book, you can get it at godandgigs.com/books. The reason why I'm talking about this, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, is because I was worried that what I wrote 4 years ago wouldn't apply anymore. That what worked for me 4 years ago no longer works in 2020. That because with COVID and pandemics and streaming and video and just the entire change in our lives over the last 4 years, and especially over the last 8 months, that like everything's wrong. Everything that worked before doesn't work anymore. And even in terms of what I share with you in this platform where we're trying to help you to build a better life from the inside out, I was worrying that Maybe everything is has to be just thrown out. Maybe it doesn't work anymore, and maybe you feel that way. Maybe you have felt that what you used to do, what worked 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, no longer works. It no longer has it no longer has the power. It no longer has the foundation that it used to have. And so, if you're feeling like that, if you're feeling like what used to work no longer works, and let me make sure everything's working. I'm talking about working. I'm looking and making sure that you guys can see me okay, because I see a little bit of a slow connection on Facebook, but hopefully I can close out some things and make sure that's not happening. If you guys are seeing any pause, it's probably just my computer. So I always freak out when I see that, though. I hate to think that there would be anything that's going to affect your viewing, but no, it looks like everything's working. So let me get back into the flow. So my change was from writing this book to now thinking, okay, is this still relevant? Is what I do still relevant? I've done courses now on live streaming because I never used to live stream, but now I have to teach myself how to live stream. That seems relevant. That's important right now. But maybe the stuff that I wrote about in 2016 about how to connect with your church and stay in a mainstream environment as a musician and still be able to balance those two worlds, maybe that doesn't apply anymore. Maybe you're a church musician and you haven't played a live service in 3 or 4 months. Maybe you're a gigging musician and gigs are no longer happening live in your area, and you're thinking, okay, what now? What I used to do no longer applies. All the rules are changed and everything's just different now. And so the reason I wanted to really talk about this is because, again, I want to help people who are looking for solutions to be able to keep your cool, to stay focused, to be able to overcome these challenges even in the days and weeks where things seem like they're changing. I want to go back to the book. I am talking about the book, and I'm using the book kind of like as a springboard, because I looked back and I said, okay, if these principles in my book haven't changed, what's up, Jody? Good to see you, brother. If these principles haven't changed, then maybe I should keep applying them in 2020, even 4 years after I wrote it. So that's why, if you want to check out the book, you can always go to godofgifts.com/books. It's available on Kindle, on Amazon. It's available as a paperback. Any way you want to get that book. iBooks is also available on Apple, and pretty much any online bookstore you go to, just type in God and Gigs and it'll show up. But I'm wanting to walk through this in a specific way. Again, whether you read the book or not, I want you to see how these principles don't change. 4 years later, the things that we talked about, they can still help you keep your cool as a creative when things are changing, when things are no longer the same. And so, let me go over here and make sure I'm typing on the right thing. Let's go to studio mode so I can see what's going on. And then I'll be checking on the chat as well. So last week, we talked about a connection to God. And we really talked about really staying connected in all facets of connection, not just to God, but to your family, to your friends, to your fellow artists. That's what we talked about. You can go back on Facebook or on YouTube and check out last week's talk on connection or confusion. This week, I wanted to move on to the priorities we face, because actually what my book is based on is this anagram called service. And so the first letter stands for S, is staying connected. However, you can't just stay connected. You also have to move on to something else, which I term in this thing as spells out service. So the E in service stands out for establishing your priorities. And so when you establish your priorities, the way I wanted to look at this is this, and the book kind of explains this, but I want to explain it now, especially 2020. Your priorities are those things that don't change even when things around you change. Your priorities don't shift when the world shifts. Your priorities are always the same, and then you figure out how to apply yourself to the priorities, and the way that you work through those priorities may change. My priority is always going to be my wife and my family. However, the way I deal with my wife and my family may change because of the circumstances around me. Being a good Christian, being a good citizen, being a strong role model is always a priority. The way that I act that out, though, might have to change in 2020 based on the way that things are going. The fact that I want to be a relevant and creative, someone that really pushes the envelope creatively and is always challenging myself, That doesn't change. The way I have to do that does change. So I want to establish my priorities, but I never want my priorities to be so unconnected to what's going on around my world that I don't actually pay attention to how I'm applying myself to those priorities. And so if you agree with that, just hit in the chat, say agree or something like that. Let me know that you agree with me that you have to keep your priorities the same, even though the way you apply your priorities may change. And so just hit it like agree or yes or something like that, so I know that you're following along with me, that we're all together in this, because I want to make sure that this makes sense to everybody that's watching. Let me try opening this up one more time, because I opened up the chat and I lost some of you guys. Lost some of the things I was saying. There we go. So this is the first point I'd make. Is it's called big rocks first. Those of you who might have heard this analogy, you'll know what I'm talking about. You might have heard this analogy of whenever you want to fill up a jar with water and you want to put a bunch of rocks in that same jar. If you put those rocks in the little ones first, you fill up all the space, and then you try to fit the big rock in on top of the little rocks, and you fill in the water, the big rock can't fit. The water and the little rocks take up all the space in the jar, and so you're trying to squeeze that big rock in, and it doesn't fit, and the water is like, it's overflowing, it's just not working. That's the principle in terms of what you have to put in your life jar, your creative life jar first. What goes first in your bucket, your creative bucket? That's your priority. And so now that so many things have changed in my life and in yours, I implore you, make sure that the big rocks are going in first. Now, there's so many things coming at you and me when it comes to creative life. How to keep our careers going. How do we apply, handle these massive changes where gigs are gone and churches are meeting either virtually or, in cars, or, only groups of maybe 20 at a time or 10 at a time. Our families are affected. Homeschool or not to take your kid to, or send your kid to school. I mean, there's so many things that are facing us as people and creatives that it can become overwhelming, and you're dealing with all these little rocks, trying to get everything into this bucket, and then the big rock, whatever that big priority is, gets lost in the shuffle, and it doesn't fit, and it feels like you're throwing everything at a problem, but nothing's actually happening. My suggestion to you is always start with the big rocks. The big rock might be, again, maybe it won't be your creativity in terms of a particular project. Maybe you got to set that project to the side for a second and focus on a big rock, like just paying the bills. Maybe there's a big rock like taking care of a family member who might be sick, or being careful about COVID, or whatever it takes to keep yourself healthy. Maybe it is going to the doctor. Maybe it is checking back on your financials or your insurances and things like that. Doesn't sound very sexy, doesn't sound very fun, but it's a big rock, and it has to be addressed first before you address the little rocks. Now, I am not saying that your creative life is not a big rock. I'm saying that you got to set them in order so that all of them fit into the jar. And if you try to start with the little rocks of, I need to work on this thing and this thing and this thing and this thing and this thing, you find yourself overwhelmed, and you can't even focus on the creativity because your big rocks are sitting on the side like a boulder weighting you down. So what I'm saying is focus on the little rocks after you place the priorities, the big priorities first. I talk about that in the book. Once again, I talk about establishing your priorities in terms of what kind of creative do you want to be? Do you want to be a creative that moves around and travels, or you want to be a creative that stays home? Well, in this case, most of us are staying home. So your priority shifts from I want to be traveling to I need to make sure that my home is in order. I need to make sure that I can make money in my hometown, because traveling is really not much of an option. And so it shifts the way you think about your priority, but your priority still is how are you going to conduct yourself as a creative and create the best career you can. So I hope that makes sense. If that makes sense, please chat and tell me up that that makes sense. Or how are you dealing? As a matter of fact, I'd really love to know in the chat, how are you, what is your biggest priority? What is the big priority that kind of keeps you up at night, or the one that you feel like you're kind of like losing sight of? Is it a creative priority? Is it a family priority? Is it a business priority? Is it a faith priority? Whatever that priority is, I would love to know, because that way we can talk about How do you establish that priority and make sure that you put that big rock first? Put the big rock first, and then we can deal with the little rocks later. So moving on, the third letter in my service analogy, my service anagram, which is again what's spelled out in the book, is respect the business. And this one was a big one for me when I wrote the book 4 years ago, but it's also a big one right now because business has never been more crazy, and it's never needed more grounding of how do we deal with this than now. Respecting the business to me means knowing that the business is a business. Van Morrison's one of my favorite quotes said this. He said that music is spiritual, the music business is not. And so whether we're talking about music, creative life, artistic life, the industry, the music industry, the art, entertainment industry, this business has been rocked to its core. And there's so many situations right now where we don't know, like, how do I conduct myself in terms of making a living, talking to people, networking, changing my entire business philosophy, whether I'm gigging for a life, for a living, whether I had to change and get a side hustle or a 9 to 5, whether my job, I've been on unemployment, whether I should even apply for unemployment, how do I do that as a freelancer? There have been 1,000 questions for all of us. So what I'm asking you is, how are you going to make sure that your business stays the way that it needs to stay, the things that don't change, to keep your cool as a business person, as a creative entrepreneur, even while things are changing all around you? And so this is the principle that I'll ask you to do. Think about it. Industries change, principles don't. Industries change, principles don't. How many of you remember I'm telling on myself now, but how many of you remember even when cassettes came out? Cassettes was, I believe, the first time that we were talking about recording live radio. And I remember that the industry was in a uproar about cassettes because once cassettes came out, people could record live radio, and there would be no reason for people to buy the actual cassettes from the or buy the vinyls, because they could simply record whatever they wanted off the radio. I remember that being a huge deal. It was a huge deal because the industry changed. Overnight, this technology allowed people to make your mixtape and just record whatever you want to record, and you could do it from the comfort of your home. And as you all know, 20, 30 years later, we're way past just recording on live radio. Radio itself is scared of streaming, and streaming itself is dealing with how do we pay people and whether we're even paying enough, and people are against Spotify and against Apple Music, and now everything is video, and now we have this question about video and syncing licenses or people paying for that. The industry changes like over and over again. We see these huge changes in our creative lives. What doesn't change is how you conduct yourself in that business. What doesn't change is how you make sure that you are doing the right things at the right time, in the right way, and always letting people know that your integrity is not in question, your character is not in question, and you're doing things to build up your business, but you're doing it also so that you can have as many win-wins as possible. Those principles did not change when Spotify showed up. Those principles did not change when COVID showed up. Those principles did not change even when we changed over from, live music to live streaming. None of those principles changed. You still have to connect with people. You still have to be honest with people. You still have to talk to people. You still have to be able to offer them something. You still have to be able to be engaging, but be honest and say when you can't really engage, and keep your close connections and your close relationships close, and make sure that you don't open yourself up to a world of people that you don't trust and don't understand and can't vibe with. That is where the principles do not change. I feel like hopefully that I'm sharing some good stuff here, because I feel like this is really important, and I think about this, even before I share it, I'm like, is this going to make sense? But I feel like this is where, hopefully you're seeing the value of this. You got to make sure you focus on the right things, and one of those things to respect the business is to make sure your principles are sound. Go back and read some business books. Go back and read even Proverbs and doing your Bible study, but just make sure you're grounded as a business person, as a person of integrity in your character, so that you don't get rocked and thrown off when the industry changes, because the industry is going to continue to change. When this pandemic is over, prayerfully, very soon, one day, very soon, this pandemic is over, the industry will change again. And we can't be thrown off by every wind and storm and change that happens. We have to make sure as creators we think through these things. And even after this is over, we have to be a creator that someone wants to work with, wants to learn from, wants to listen to, wants to buy music from or art from, and does things the right way. Those things did not change. So I hope that made sense to you. And I got one more point here that again comes from the book. It talks about visualizing your goals. And I do want to do a quick check-in, because every time we do this, I always feel like I'm missing out on some comments. I'm looking for comments, and if I don't see any, I'm just assuming that, what's up, Stephanie? Good to see you, brother. Brad, Timothy. Let's see here. Oh, good. We have a couple of people sharing. So I will stop it from there. Just wanted to check in on Facebook to see how everything was going. So again, remember, comments will come through. I will see all comments on Facebook and YouTube. So please let me know if you're watching, if anything resonates from you. If you disagree with something, please let me know, because I want to make sure that I'm helping as many people as possible. So number one was to make sure that you are establishing your priorities, even in the midst of all these issues. Then number two was to make sure, let me jump back a little bit, make sure that you are establishing your priorities. And then number two, respecting the business. And then last but not least, visualizing your goals is V. So you have S, stay connected, E, establish your priorities, R, respect the business. Now V, visualize your goals. And here's the principle I want to put on that as I quickly try to squeeze through, because I don't want to keep you too long. What you don't see won't help you. Have you ever heard the phrase, what you don't know can't hurt you? The kind of, tongue-in-cheek kind of thing, like you don't want to know what's going on around you. If I don't see it, it won't hurt me. If I don't know about it, it won't hurt me. I can't be affected. But in terms of vision, what you don't see won't help you. I'm talking about vision. Not in terms of being able to see what the future is. None of us can see that. But if you're not visualizing your goals, even in 2020 in the pandemic, you can't find where to move or have any idea of what to do next unless you're still visualizing a better future. And this is important. My pastor preached on this yesterday. It was an incredible dynamic message. I'll shout out Metro Life Church all the time, because Pastor Stephen Leslie is an amazing pastor, and Pastor Stephen Mary Leslie is where I attended. So he talked about expectation and faith yesterday in his message. And I want to echo that in terms of visualizing your goals and your expectations. If you haven't sat back and looked back and said, okay, in 2020, I thought I would be here, but I can't even imagine how you would have seen any of this coming. You wouldn't have seen the pandemic coming. So now what do you visualize? What do you see for yourself now? What do you see that can still be even in the midst of all these changes? Because if you're not looking forward and imagining, and the very vision and idea we're talking about is creativity, seeing what's not there. So if you can see yourself in a new position, see yourself even in this situation, and set up new goals, set up a new way of looking at life, set up a way that, you know what, I'm still seeing something. I'm still seeing a future for myself, and actually writing that stuff down and making it clear to yourself that you're not going to be derailed by what's happened in the last 8 months. You're going to continue to push forward. You're going to continue to look for something, and the opportunities will present themselves because you're not looking at the circumstances. You're looking at your goals and your vision. And so if you don't see that, it won't help you. So that's why I said what you don't see won't help you. You have to visualize the goal and actually write it down, put it in place where it makes physical sense to you in terms of, if I go this one step and this one step and this one step, I can reach my goal. Some people call this SMART goals. They have all these different phrases. I don't want to go into a lot of goal planning. I do have some stuff that helps with that at godandgigs.com. If you will type in goals in the search bar, you'll see a bunch of things I set up on goals, or a whole series of articles I wrote on goal settings, on goal setting, and how you can prepare for a new chapter in your life, whether it be a new year or a new season or whatever. So just type in goals at godandgigs.com if you want to check that out. But actually, I should probably type that in as well. Once again, I always forget I should share some of these things if you guys want to look for it. So gottagigs.com, and then search for goals. Okay, so yeah, so if you look for that, you'll see, that particular article. So that's the third section. Okay, so once again, establishing your priorities, respecting the business, and in visualizing your goals. All principles from the book that I just talked about, but they have not changed. These principles, I wrote the book 4 years ago. None of these principles have changed. All of these things, still matter in 2020. They haven't changed. You haven't become a irrelevant creative if you're focusing on your priorities. You're not irrelevant if you are establishing your priorities and making sure that you're thinking through what you're going to do and why you're going to do it. You're not irrelevant if you are respecting the business, even though the business models have changed drastically. We also have a course on live streaming, because that's one of the big things that has exploded all over the industry for everybody. And we're helping people now. I've actually been running my own live stream now for 15 shows. Is now a new business model. We are charging for our shows, and we do a free show. We also do a paid show. So you can learn more about that at gottagigs.com/livestream. But definitely just want to encourage you, don't lose track of what really works in 2020, because some of these principles have never changed. You still have to be a character-filled creative. You still have to be someone that can be depended on, someone that can think through, that can visualize. These things haven't changed in 2020. And so once again, I'll just do a shameless plug for the book. If you want to check out the book, all these principles are in gottagigs.com/books. You'll see this as well as our study guide. Let me do this for Instagram. Can't really do this right. As well as for Instagram, and as well as for Instagram. It's available on Amazon, on Apple iBooks, and Barnes & Noble, any other of those sites. You can always check it out, and of course, gottagigs.com/books. I believe that's pretty much it. Let me make sure that you guys have these links, and I'll come back later and do that. No other announcements I can think of. I'm in the creative community as well, so if anybody wants to share in the creative community, make sure you're posting in the creative community. Make sure you email me at alan@gottagigs.com if you have any questions or concerns, things that I can help you with your creative life. What would you like to hear more of? That's probably my one last question is, what do you need more of? What is the one thing that's kind of you're still struggling with? And what could we do in Gotta Gigs to help you with that? If it's financial stuff, if it's how to handle your family, if it's dealing with the COVID situation in terms of pivoting your business, whatever resources we need to do to help you, we want to do that. In this case, I really felt like dealing with the mindset and trying to keep us positive as this thing drags on was super important. So I went ahead in that direction. And again, talking about the book, make sure the podcast is also in your life. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast yet, gottagigs.com/category/podcast. The easiest way, simply go to your podcast app and just look for the God and Gigs Show. Got great episodes coming up. Interviewed a great friend of mine, amazing creative management and business mind, Dre Marshall. That's coming up pretty soon. Some other interviews that we're going to be doing very soon. Very excited about. Can't tell about those yet because I'm going to confirm them. But just a lot of cool stuff happening at gottagigs.com. Make sure you check out the website. And again, here on Facebook or on YouTube, comment. Let us know how these creative checkups are helping you, if they're blessing you, if there are things that you'd love to hear about, some topics that you'd like us to consider. Please let me know. Email me, leave a comment, and we can talk about it at our future checkups. Okay, so God bless you guys. Thank you so much for being a part of this. West Unlimited, what's up? Good to see you, man. West Bird over here on Instagram. Bless you, man. Thank you so much for checking in. I can't seem to see everybody, and I got these 3 cameras going on, so you can see me looking down here. You guys are probably like, okay, where's he looking at? I'm looking at my phone because I couldn't get like 500 different clips. But Wes, thank you so much for checking in with me, brother. Wes did an amazing job, you guys. He's been doing some I think he's been doing some educational stuff as well. And then we're working with Mike Phillips, who's another incredible creative. I've been trying to nail down Mike for months now. We should have done the interview when I had the chance. We didn't know COVID was coming when he was down here in Miami. But yeah, just some amazing stuff that you're doing, Wes. So bless you, man. Thank you so much for checking in. I'm checking out right now. I feel bad, but I got to get ready for a lesson. So this usually goes like 2 to 2:30 ish Eastern time. And so I try to make sure I check in with everyone, but also respect your time because it's the middle of the day. So anybody watching this on the replay, God bless you as well. Same thing I said to everybody. Check out the podcast, godofgigs.com/books if you want to get. Again, 4th anniversary. About this time, I was promoting this. I was finishing publishing it. The God of Gigs show is 3 years old. It came out also in August, so you can see this is like our anniversary month. So it's like we talk about all this stuff just because it's, again, nostalgic for me. But thank you so much, Wes. Everybody else that joined us on Instagram, everybody that joined us on Facebook, YouTube. Thank you so much for being a part of making this a part of your creative day. Let me go ahead and sign out and give you guys back your day. Thank you so much. I'll see you hopefully next Monday, Thursday for a new episode for the God of Gigs show, and then next Monday for our creative checkup. God bless.